All right, we're live. Sweet. I am back this week, and I'm just here alone. Last time I enjoyed taking questions, and I want to do it again today. And then next week I'll be back to interviewing again. So stay tuned. This coming week I'm pretty excited about what I'll be talking about. It's going to be with Vegas Aces, and I'll share that information pretty soon. But today it's just me here to answer your questions, to talk to you guys, and I'll be here for as long as the conversation's fun and interesting, up to a maximum of 2 hours. I've got 4 o'clock. I got something I got to do. So I'm here and happy to be here. It's Tuesday, just like always. This is my time. I can't guarantee I'm here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, but I'm here many of them. So yeah, it's time to talk about working in the industry and poker and anything else you guys are interested in. I'm totally down. First person to the chat gets me to talk about whatever you want first, and feels fun, right? In the meantime, let me take a look and see. I'm just curious. I haven't checked out the Daniel Negreanu, Doug Polk heads-up match in a while. While I've got a little downtime for a second, I'm just going to take a look at this, see where everything's at. See, it says it was updated 3 hours ago. Yesterday's session 23. They reached... Oh, maybe this was before. They got to the halfway point, it looks like. And Negreanu is down $770,000 at the halfway point. But he says he's not going to quit. There was a thing, apparently, where he was able to quit if he wanted to. Brent was first in there. He says, hello, just passing by. Hey, what's going on? And Angel says, hi, my friend. Hey, how's it going with you too? Appreciate you guys jumping in the chat. Why not, right? You get a chance to have your comment read. Brent then says, I'm just going to listen because I'm doing something. No problem at all. Hopefully I'm entertaining enough for you to do exactly that. Man, I was listening to a Bill Simmons. I'm from Boston, so I sort of like Bill Simmons, but I totally understand he's a bit much sometimes. But I was listening to a Bill Simmons and Matt Damon podcast from 2 years ago just now, and they were talking about rounders and sort of how the timing of everything happened, where he started working on rounders before Good Will Hunting even came out in theaters, which was interesting. But just, hearing Matt Damon's experience in that, how I think it was in 1998, he and Ben Affleck, they each were given $10,000 to go play the main event that year. This was 5 years before Moneymaker, I guess it is, when Rounders came out. And listening to Matt Damon recount and like talk about how he went to play in the main event, and it got up to about 700 total entries that year, which is nothing compared to what it's been in the last 10 years. But it was really interesting listening to Matt Damon say he got it all in against Doyle Brunson and lost kings versus aces pre-flop. Brunson had aces, and Matt Damon said he was just trying to make it till day 2 until he got pocket kings. And he made the comment, which is sort of funny to hear somebody say, he made the comment, I maybe could have got away from it. He's talking about being all in pre-flop, but actually I guess technically I don't know if he was all in pre-flop. But anyway, I thought that was pretty cool to listen to Matt Damon talk about his 1998 World Series main event stint and how they used it as promotion for the movie Rounders, which apparently it did pretty well promoting it. Like, obviously we all know that this movie Rounders has done really well too, but that was back when poker was this underground thing. But yeah, I'm here and I'm available to answer questions about dealing poker. I'm available to answer questions. We had some people asking all kinds of great things last time, and if you have an issue that you run into when you're dealing, feel free to shout me out and ask me about it. If you are curious about anything that you experience. I had somebody the other day. I want to read little snippets of this email because it's really cool to get stuff like this. I got an email that said, hey, Mark, just wanted to give you the great news that I've been hired and I had my first night as a dealer. They said, what poker room? They shadowed some of the table games because in some places you have to deal some of the table games too. They listed what the games were, and they also shadowed Texas Hold'em for the first few hours. And then they took a break, and when they came back, they were put on a brand new 5-handed 1-2-0 limit table. And they said it went well even though they had no training on how to use a shuffle machine or Poker Atlas is the poker software that they had there. And just so you guys know, that's sort of how it works, right? Like when you get into your first job, you've only really learned how to pass the audition, and then some of the rooms will give you additional training for how they do it at their room. But there's so much stuff when you first start in your very first week that you really don't know how to do. And that's why I try to go into a little bit more in these courses, because, the lessons I give are teaching what you need to know to pass the audition, and then also sort of giving you insight into what the experience is like as a dealer, which makes it a little bit less stressful when you start, for sure, because there is, every single person that passes the audition always tells me their first 4 weeks or so is just learning, especially the first day or two, and eventually you find yourself a little groove there. Let's see. They said it was a lot to take in, but I felt more comfortable the more time I spent. Yep, that's how it works. And I think in a short time I'll master all these games. And they said they even dealt a very high hand. They said a straight flush, and it sounds like they got tipped for it as well, pretty early on, which is pretty cool. And getting emails like this is awesome. I get these a lot, and it's a really cool feeling. Siri just told me that she's having trouble hearing me. I'm gonna wonder about that one later. Oh, you know what? My headphones aren't connected to the right thing. Let's put them in here. But yeah. So I figured I'd come on today and spend a little bit of time, and I'm not necessarily looking to stay here for too long, but I'm curious. Let's see. Ooh, I can talk about a poker session that I played lately. I thought it was pretty funny. So I'm sitting in the seat right next to the dealer. This is one of those tables. It's at the Hard Rock in South Florida. And it's one of those tables where there's plexiglass all over the table, and everybody's really clean and careful there. And it was really interesting. I'm sitting there, and a player at the table to my left sees my mask that I have on, which is this Truepokerdealer mask that I wear. And it's starting to get sort of like worn in the sides because I had to adjust it because the size wasn't perfect. It's the only reason I don't really sell a lot of them. But I'm sitting there like this, and they joke with me, and they're like, "You're a poker dealer?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I tell them, "Well, it's my YouTube channel. I teach people to be poker dealers as well." And then the dealer looks at me, and he's like, all of a sudden, now this was a guy that had a lot of energy and flair, and it's a type of energy and flair that I personally don't teach, because it's really distracting for the game. But it was really interesting. All of a sudden, his vibe shifted because he was like aware that I was aware of what he was doing, and people don't know if I'm gonna like report. I'm not there playing poker to go and tell their bosses when they make mistakes and stuff, but as soon as he got up from the table after having some conversation back and forth and hearing about Truepokerdealer, as soon as he got up from the table, he told the next person who sat down that I was there, and the next person that sat down actually knew me, had worked with me, and it was a pretty cool conversation because I only worked with him for about a month and a half. I did remember him, but I had to sort of like search my memory because I was at that property for years that he was at for like a month and a half before I left. And it's cool when someone sits down that I've actually taught how to deal. A couple of comments here. Levi says, for every email you receive, there are tons of other people who have successfully passed an audition. Yeah, I've actually found that out too. I appreciate that insight, Levi. It's fascinating to me how I literally feel like I go anytime I play poker and meet people who have learned through Truepokerdealer. I love that feeling. And everyone's so appreciative and nice about it, which is really cool. So thanks for bringing that to light. There are a lot of people that have learned to deal poker over the years from Truepokerdealer. Rate says, how old were you when you got into poker? So the way that your question is phrased, you're asking about poker. As a kid, I played poker at home with pennies with my dad. He used to play in home games and stuff with his friends. And I actually ended up, when I got a little bit older, I ended up going to, as an adult rather, I ended up going to play in the home games with his friends a couple of times. My buddy and I went there, and we sort of cleaned up because we understood the theory behind poker pretty well. A lot of people that play poker in home games, they just do the same thing over and over again. They think about it in terms of luck and all this other stuff. And especially 20 years ago or so, People just weren't into the science of it, is the way that I'll say it. But when I first started playing poker, I must have been about 7, but it wasn't that frequently. And then there was one summer where I was going into my senior year of college, so I was finishing my junior year of college, and my buddy had always been the guy who, we were both in school for engineering, and he'd been the guy who always wanted to get the most prestigious summer job so that he could get the resume perfect and all this stuff. And good for him. He's a very successful attorney now. But this one summer, I talked him into coming up with invention ideas for the entire summer is what we do. Just trying to invent stuff. And this was after my junior year of college. And that summer, in addition to coming up with invention ideas, I really started playing a lot of online poker. This was probably 2003 when Moneymaker and all that stuff was really happening. I'd been playing poker for a few years before that in college with the guys on the baseball team, like $5 tournaments that the whole team would play. But it was pretty interesting getting into a lot of online poker and also coming up with inventive stuff. But it was a cool summer, sort of. We made some money that summer we did this thing where we told people that we were studying a gambling addiction study for the University of Massachusetts, which is where he went, and we would go to convenience stores, and in Massachusetts people would buy scratch-off tickets in huge quantity and just toss them into like a trash that was just pretty much for that. And it was pretty clean and all that stuff, and we would go and ask them, hey, can we take the losing tickets out of the trash for a gambling addiction study? And in that time, I think we must have found about $2,500 that summer as well. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Just having that summer to do all that stuff. So yeah, I ended up playing a lot of poker, and at that time, I ended up doing online poker advertising. Where after playing poker, not long after that, I transitioned into an affiliate marketer, and then July 20th of 2006 crushed me. I went from making pretty good money to nothing overnight as an online poker marketer because the government passed the Unlawful Internet Gambling Act. And it wasn't very long after that I ended up moving to the west coast of the United States and taking a blackjack course and getting into working in casinos. Up until then, as I was doing poker advertising for a couple years, I was playing poker regularly at Foxwoods as a way to try to make money on the side on top of the income I was making. And also because, I was young and stupid and wasn't really thinking about things, and it seemed like fun stuff to do with money coming in from poker advertising. Might as well play poker. So I sort of got into it. I created a website called chainpoker.com back then, which was also, it was a poker strategy site that doesn't exist anymore, but we used it to basically market all of this online poker advertising, and we did pretty well. Like in a year and a half, we took in 6 figures combined in a year and a half just from online poker advertising. Man, those were the days back when that stuff was around. It's just not the same as it used to be, at least in my experience. And Mike said, you played ball? I bet you were a pitcher. So I did pitch in high school, and I was a shortstop and a pitcher in high school, and I really loved it. And then after my senior year of high school and before my freshman year, so it was during the summer after my senior year of high school, I used to work at a lake as a summer job, and I threw out my shoulder throwing rocks really far, and I heard a pop, and I ended up having to get arthroscopic surgery, and I was never really able to pitch again after that. I think that the person who performed it wasn't great, but I ended up playing shortstop in college, and I was only half into it, if I'm being honest, by the time I got to college. I loved it in high school, but I still stuck with it. But yeah, the first time I actually worked in poker, I think I was 25 maybe, and it was pretty fun. I come from the Northeast, Massachusetts specifically, where at the time anyway, and in the town I grew up in, people sort of looked at me a certain way for wanting to be in casinos. For being a poker dealer wasn't respected the same as it is now, for me anyway. And now it's people look at you wow, they want to hear stories and all this stuff, which is awesome. But back then, it wasn't until I went to the West Coast where I was really comfortable trying to do something like that. Jim says, I'm 17 years old and I would like to become a dealer in the future. I speak mediocre English. I think in a year I will have perfected them. Do you think that if I get a small degree in German, I will hired in Germany? I'm Greek and I'm a man. Let me see. So I will say this. I don't know a whole lot about what it's like to deal poker in Germany. I've had a couple of people on the channel in the chat talk about poker in Germany. It sounds relatively similar to what it is out here, but I really don't know. If you're talking about coming to the US, United States, or something like that, if you learn how to deal poker and you're good, you're fine. Yeah, you want to learn customer service. Yes, there's a little bit of a disadvantage with a language barrier, but it's not too bad. Now, I want to be clear. You have to be able to speak English fluently. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely think that if you learn to deal poker at any age, it's this weird thing where, I'm not supposed to encourage somebody that's 17 to learn to be a poker dealer. However, it is true that at 18 years old, in most places in the United States, you can be a poker dealer or a casino dealer in general. So, what happens if you're trying to learn when you're 17 and you're turning 18 soon, right? There's certainly value to that, but I definitely think it's... So listen, this is really how I feel about it, okay? I went to school for 4 years to get an electrical engineering degree, okay? I did pretty well, but I didn't like it, and I spent a lot of my own money and a lot of my parents' money. I literally just finished paying off my student loans like 4 months ago, and that's 20 years later almost. Okay, I spent a fortune trying to set myself up to be able to make about as much money as I could make as a poker dealer. And it's crazy when I think about it. Like, you can literally, for taking my course for $50 a month, you can literally teach yourself everything you need in order to make, 25 to 40 bucks an hour. So you're asking me, is it worth it? Hell yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like it can pay the bills for the rest of your life. But again, I don't know what it's like in Germany, and I can't speak to that exactly. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. And it's literally my favorite thing to have this in my back pocket. If I ever feel like I'm just completely like screwed as an entrepreneur, because my journey right now is as an entrepreneur, I can always just go deal poker. Like, it's just the coolest thing ever. The only things about it that can stop a person from being able to do it is if they have massive amounts of debt that are not in repayment, or if they have a criminal record with the types of felonies that you can't get a gaming license. Other than that, you should be fine. Mike said, my second guess was shortstop or second base. Poker has definitely been normalized. The stigma has weakened over the years. Yeah, it really has. You're talking about like the view of someone that's choosing to be a poker dealer or poker player for that matter. People used to think about playing poker as this like terribly scary thing, and there's multiple pros that tell stories about how their family did not support them going to do this. I think it's even a part of the storyline in Rounders, right? People just not supporting. It was Matt Damon's character's girlfriend who just like, I can't watch this happen anymore. It feels like gambling. Gambling has a stigma, all this stuff. But yeah, it really has normalized. And it's amazing. People talked about there being a poker boom and it falling off and all that stuff, and it's just not falling off. Even during COVID, there's still any state government that allows it is still continuing to allow it. I read an article, and I was talking on Facebook with someone I used to work with about how the World Series, they're going to try to run an actual World Series in 2021. And the author of the article, who is a writer for Card Player Lifestyles or something like that, was talking about how, in his opinion, he thinks that they're going to probably require vaccines for players in the series. And we were sort of going back about how it just doesn't seem likely that they're going to actually require it. Like, that's a government thing. The government needs to be the one to require a business establishment to give out vaccines, especially the vaccines that are relatively young, right? But it would be interesting if the government required it. Let's see. The Copperhound 84 says, question, if I raise do all players have to raise on my turn? I'm going to try to read this again and understand it. Let's see. If I raise, do all players have to raise on my turn? So the thing I'm trying to do, the way that you ask the question, it doesn't really translate here. But what I'm trying to do in this moment is understand what maybe you're trying to ask. So in a betting round, every hand of, we'll say Texas Hold'em, which is what most people play, in a betting round, which there are 4 betting rounds per hand, everybody that's still in the hand has to act on the highest amount that anybody's gotten to during that betting round, or anybody's raised to during that betting round. So if you raise, everybody that's still in the hand is going to have to either fold or call, or maybe they can raise if they want to put in even more money. So nobody is going to be allowed to get away without putting that same amount of money in, unless they started the hand with less than you've put in which case they'd be all in. So now you're saying, on my turn, I raised. Do all players have to raise while it's my turn? So it's sort of a similar question here. So let's use an example here, okay? So you're on the flop, and there's $30 in the pot from before the flop, and there's 4 players in the hand, okay? Player number 1 bets 10, and you raise to 30. You're player number 2, you raise to 30. Players 3 and 4 have the option. They can either fold. They do not have to put the money in. They can fold and give up their cards, or they can call 30, which I think is what you're asking, or they could make it even more. They could go up higher, 50, 60, 70. 50 would be the minimum. Maybe that's a little confusing, but it's true. So they could raise as well. And then the original person who put in 10, they could fold if they want. They don't have to put in any more, but they do lose their $10. And if they want to stay in for 80 or for the 30 that you put, they can. So hopefully that answers you. I do want you to know that the way that you're asking this question is using terminology that means things that I don't think you realize that it means. So I'm trying to do my best to understand what you're asking. John Kong says, hello, Mark. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you, too. It's great to see you back in the chat. Haven't seen you in a bit. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your New Year and had a good holiday and all that stuff. Definitely happy to see you there. Riosio, I don't know how to say it. Riosio says, do you have tips for people just started playing poker? Yeah, I mean, so if you're just starting playing poker, the real thing that you want to do, in my personal opinion, is see a lot of hands for free to sort of get a feel for it. So if I'm you, I'm going to download some kind of an online poker so I can play hands, maybe Zynga or something like that, and play for free, okay? Keep in mind, when you do that, you're doing it just to get a feel for how the cards come out. Then I would probably recommend that you play at home a little bit with some other people and sort of get a feel for it like that in person. And then after you, if you're just started playing, okay? If you're talking about playing in casinos and you've already been playing in casinos, well, then I think that you're probably ready to learn how to play the right way. Okay, you probably know the game pretty well. You've probably played a decent amount. See, here's the thing about poker, and I learned this the hard way, and I've done a couple of interviews with Michael Lockey, and I have a separate project. He's a poker pro. Okay, this blows my mind to this day. I've always thought of myself as a good poker player. All right, yes, I'm Truepokerdealer. I'm a very good poker dealer trainer. But, I play poker too, and I have for years. I realized that my, 17, 18 years of casino poker experience as a player has been learning the wrong stuff. Right up, every single day I was learning the wrong stuff right up until I started working closely with the poker pro. And I really started to realize that, this is a life lesson, honestly. Having people who really understand something deeply be your mentor for anything that you're trying to do well is so valuable. So the lesson that I essentially learned was, it doesn't make sense for me to think it through, The information's out there. if you're trying to be a winning poker player and you're just starting out, I would go out there and get yourself some real poker coaching of some sort. Pay for one of these services, or you could do it for free and start out with live poker coaching on YouTube. That's all one word. It's my channel, so I feel kind of close to it. It's what you see right here. But I mean, at the same time, it's good, and we're just starting to build it. But you sort of get the idea, right? Like, get one of these poker coaching services, or go find a pro and ask them to help you, because it is a different world when you start learning. Like for me, I learned how to play poker in terms of what were my cards. Like I'm gonna pull this deck out right here. I would be, okay, I've got this hand right here, and I'll look at it with you guys, right? So I would be like, wait, what's the way we would look? It would be like this, right? Yeah, I'd be like, all right, this is my hand and this is my position. What do I want to do? Like, that's what my thoughts would be. It's not what it's like for a poker pro, and I recommend understanding what it's like for a poker pro. A poker pro thinks about it in terms of their opponent's ranges first, and there's all kinds of things to calculate that and figure it out. And believe it or not, a lot of people nowadays say that poker has become really, really mathematical and all that stuff. Playing poker live fundamentally is not, it doesn't have to be, is what I should say, in order to be a winning poker player. So the tips that I would have is go find some real, genuine, deep poker information, and learn the right stuff from the beginning. Let's see. The Copperhound responded and said, "Oh, okay, thanks. My sister says after all players played their turn, it has to be equal amount before the next round." Well, that's true if they want to continue the hand. Okay, so if you're on the flop and one person puts in 10 and another person calls 10, and then the next person raises to 30, well, those players that put in 10, any of them can choose to fold, but they lose their $10 and they lose their cards. And so, one of the ways to win in poker is if you bet and everybody else folds, you get the pot. That's one of the ways to win. And then the Copperhound says, let's say there's two players. My sister bets first. Okay, then I raise. It's the end of the round. Does she have to make it equal to the amount before the next round? So I don't know what your definition of round means, but a betting round is, let's say you got the flop out there. And there's 3 cards on the board. Well, everybody has to put the same amount in that's going to continue before you can go to the next card. All right, so if it's just you and your sister, if you put in 10 and she puts in 30, the only way that you guys are going to get to the next card is if you put in 30 or if you raise and then she calls. Okay, you can't keep your 10 in there and then go and ask, no, I just want to see the next card. It doesn't work that way. That's called folding, and then she wins your 10 plus whatever's already in the pot, and she gets her $30 back. So, it's called closing a betting round. I've got one of my very long hairs on my neck. I'm still not used to that. Jong says, body language and tells are important too. So, it's really funny you say that. I literally memorized almost all of the Mike Carroll book of poker tells, and that was pretty much how I learned how to play poker. And I would learn my hand, and then I would use the Mike Carroll book of poker tells in order to try to figure out what other people had. And what I realized when I started to work with the pro is there's more than one way to get the same information, all right? And the pro's way is going to be much less challenging. The live poker tells, if you already have the ability to range somebody based on their betting pattern and that's it, you don't need to put all that work into the live reads. It's redundant, actually. You can use it when you need it, and that's just about it. The Copperhead says, oh, thanks, man. You're the best. Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's to you, too. Appreciate that. Riosio says, thank you. Having a mentor is very important. Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, Michael Lockheed's been a phenomenal mentor. And actually, if you go and you jump on the Live Poker Coaching channel and you watch the videos there and you comment, he does, it's a new channel, so he's answering every comment right now. He might take a week or so to get to it, but it's very helpful getting a poker pro's opinion on things for sure. Yeah, and just going back to body language and tells. So, the stuff I said, it's like, the thing I want to say is I have a version of my poker playing game that I sort of created for myself that's based largely on what my hand is and what poker tells I have about the other person. And yeah, the hand sort of tells a story, but I wasn't ranging people as I would go, which is really where a lot of this stuff comes from, where that's valuable. And I mean, by not ranging people, you just make it so much harder for yourself, because you're not thinking about you're just not thinking about it the same is what my experience is. Using tells is really valuable. Rioso, that's very nice of you. You gave a super chat. Super appreciate that as always. And I also like it's a pretty cool looking, it looks like a hippo emoji, but it's like an emoji. It's awesome. Jong says, could you show us a hand of Cincinnati? I watched a couple hands of that game and it was a bit confusing. So unfortunately today I don't have my table. It broke, and so that's part of why I'm doing it in this format. But I also want to say that I forget exactly how Cincinnati poker goes. So what I'm going to do is take a little look. All right, so we'll look at this together, and we'll see if we can sort of get to the bottom of this. Every once in a while, part of the reason I love being True Poker Dealer is because this happens to me regularly, right? Like, there's something that's being played in one place in the country that hasn't spread everywhere, so I haven't seen it necessarily, and I get to hear about it. So let's do this. I'm going to share this screen. And here we got it. Nope, that was the wrong screen. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. Here it is. All right, I guess I got to move myself over a little. Let's see. So I have no idea if this site is reliable, but it's got Bicycle's name on it. It could be. The goal of each player is to win the pot, which contains all the bets the players have made, blah, blah, blah. 5 cards are dealt to each player, plus another hand of 5 cards face down on the table. Interesting. Does this sound like the one you're asking about? Cards are turned up one at a time. There's a round of betting each time a card is exposed. Each player selects a hand of 5 cards from among the cards in their own hand and the 5 on the table. Okay. Poker hands, 5 of a kind. So there's a joker in this game. So you get 10 cards. That sounds pretty wild. Let's see. It was similar. Interesting. Enrico says, watching this because RDR2. What is RDR2? I'm always looking stuff up. I always feel like I'm not with it if I don't know this stuff, but I'm fine with that. How to win at poker. Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know what that means, but okay. It's a mini game in Red Dead Redemption. Oh, cool. Played like 5 card Omaha. So they had 5 cards face down on the board. Here, let me find another site that shows this. Cincinnati Poker. How to play Cincinnati Poker. 7 steps with pictures. Interesting. Tired of the typical old horse poker variations? All right. 4 hole cards, 4 community cards, and Omaha like chaos. It's interesting. Like, it always starts for beginners. Place the first. All right. Deal 4 hole cards to each player. Okay. So it's just 4 face-up community cards, and there's 1 betting round for each. It looks like that's all that it is, right? It's just 1 card at a time. Yep. All right, so it's Omaha with 4 cards on the board. And let's see. So can you use, how many cards can you use from your hand? 4 whole cards, 4 community cards, best 5 card hand using the 4 whole, and any or all of the 4 community cards. So it looks like there's no restriction. So maybe some people are tired of playing Omaha where you can only use exactly 2 from your hand and exactly 3 from the board, and this gives them a way out. Plus there's 1 extra betting round. Any limit or all ante, pot limit or no limit only, whatever suits your game. So yeah, so there's going to be 1 more betting round if there's a pre-flop round as well. So let's hide this for a second. So I look, I haven't actually played like 5 card Omaha. Oh, I meant 4 cards, not 5. Yeah, it was high low pot limit, but there were 5 cards on the board and 5 cards for each player from the game that I observed. Well, what I'll do, let me see. I'm gonna have to reach out to some people and figure out how the most traditional casino version of it goes. Actually, there is one other place I can look. Let me see if they show Cincinnati in. I will share this window again. Let's see. This site, WSOP Dealers and Staff, often has a lot of stuff. This is a reference guide. All right, let's check out the reference guide here. And I'm just gonna search it for Cincinnati. No, they don't have it there. What else do they have? Tournament rules. You never know. This one's pretty long. Nope. It's not there either. But that's an interesting question. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to actually figure that out. So I could watch a tutorial on YouTube, but I'm sort of afraid of that flagging my video. I know that it's technically supposed to be okay, but I'm not sure exactly how to make it work. And it's like, you know, as a YouTuber, I really hate the idea of content getting sort of flagged. But I will at some point, the dancing hippo is just still there. I will at some point soon figure that out. I'm going to leave a note for myself to go figure out Cincinnati poker. And I should have that. The next time I do a regular live stream, I'll include that for sure. That's what I'll say. I've got a thing I call, a document called Lesson 39, which is all the stuff that I got to go back and add later. So I'll put this in there. Research, Cincinnati. Okay, so, and I just want to ask the question, where was this game located? California? Yeah, I'm curious, what state was this in? Or country, or, yeah, I forget exactly where you said you deal. I keep asking you this too. I sort of feel bad forgetting, but, you know, it's like I can't do anything about it. I still got to ask. Alaska, home game. Oh, interesting. So home games have a lot more different versions of poker. And that actually makes sense. It's possible that Cincinnati poker is not played very frequently in casinos then. You know, like if you were to ask me, hey, Mark, how do you play baseball, which is a type of poker? I would be like, oh, man, I haven't seen that since before I worked in the industry, you know. But the version of Cincinnati I just saw there could be pretty interesting. I could see doing a 4-card hand and a 4-card board with a 2-card flop, a 1-card turn, and a 1-card river, and that being pretty popular because of the fact that people in casinos might be a little bit tired of not being able to use all 4 whole cards, right? So what happens if you get dealt, the rare time you get dealt quads in your hand in Omaha? Well, you can't use it, right? So I could see people sort of being like, ooh, I can use anything I want now. Oh, what happened to my face? The focus just went crazy. All right, let me fix that. Oh, no, it's back. Alaska home game. Yeah, so that makes it so that I feel less bad about not knowing because, people make up a lot of stuff when it comes to poker. And, obviously I looked this up and it was there, but I was thinking maybe you were saying you played this in a casino. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But now I feel a little bit differently realizing it wasn't there. Whew. Let's see. What else? I do like to generally come into these conversations with something specific whenever I can, but let's see. It's tough being up here. I was talking to a friend about this earlier. Like, being on YouTube and just talking on my own with nobody else on here is tough. But I feel pretty good about having developed this skill. Why am I saying all this to you guys? Because I always try to encourage people to jump on YouTube for anything that they love. If there's something that you feel passionate about, you're going to suck at first. It is what it is, but you'll get better. And helping people like learn stuff. I actually have a list for myself, and I really value having this list because what did I call it? It's sort of the specific knowledge I have in life. I called it and like this stuff can be anything. I said list of knowledge that I have that I'm able to teach people on a high level. And like on that list for me, I talked earlier about how I played baseball and how I threw my shoulder out throwing rocks. I actually put down how to throw rocks and skip rocks. Like I could teach a course in that. I spent 5 summers at that lake, and I played baseball on top of it. It's a stupid but fun skill that I know that I could have a YouTube channel on, but it's just I'd rather put more energy into this YouTube channel. I've already got it and I love it, but I recommend that to anybody that's watching right now. If you have anything that you want to make, like just do it. I still can't believe that in 2000 and it must have been 2013 or something, one of those years back then. Myself, my wife at the time, and my kid got flown out to Malta for a project just because I created a YouTube channel teaching people how to be poker dealers. Like, it's such a valuable thing to just create stuff that's good and people like. Let's see. AJ Fan said, "Are you subscribed to PewDiePie?" No, I am not. Mr. Beast, I subscribed to him like 2 days ago just for the heck of it. I sort of use Mr. Beast to learn about YouTube a bit in terms of the algorithm and stuff like that, because he's got people that make pretty good videos about him, and I'm mentioning him because he's also got a huge following. PewDiePie, no, but he seems cool. Like, I don't know, he's obviously great at what he does. Jonk says, "What would you do when you have 8-9 offsuit and there are 2 other players in the hand? Player X is all in, player Y calls the all in, and you hit the straight on the turn, queen high straight." That's sort of a brutal question because I had a very similar situation to that. I hit the straight on the turn with an 8-7, and there was a 9-10 jack on the board, and the action before me went, all in, and then all in on top of that. It was a 2-5 game, and I had about 600 left, and I had to make this decision. There was no possible flush. I had to make this decision. Do I want to get it in here? And I ended up getting it in, and I was against the king queen. They had me nutted. I was drawing completely dead. And that was a terrible feeling. But my honest answer is, if I have an 8-9 and the 10 jack queen is on the board, and especially if it wasn't 3 or 4 bet pre-flop, right? Like if it's 3 or 4 bet pre-flop, first of all, I don't have any business being in with 8-9, but if it's 3 or 4 bet pre-flop, there's a higher chance that the 3 or 4 better have ace king. But I mean, I think you just got to go with it, honestly. And if you get stacked, you get stacked, and then maybe you play 8-9 offsuit a little less is what I want to honestly say. 2 spades on the board makes it more likely that you're good, honestly. If somebody's jamming, having 2 spades on the board makes it possible that there's a flush draw out there that's jamming. But yeah, I would be probably going for it. And like I said, I had a situation like that. It was definitely over a $2,000 pot, and I was drawing dead on the turn when I got my money in. And it's like one of the worst feelings ever, but it happens. Also, keep in mind, I am a poker dealer trainer, not a poker player trainer. So I would have to take your specific situation. Which anytime I try to ask a scenario to the poker pro that I work with, Michael Lockey, he always tells me I need way more information than what you just provided there, and so I always have to provide all of this information, and then he'll give me an assessment. Let's see, AJ Fan, do you believe that Chuck E. Cheese is a children's casino, or would you describe it as that? So I see the sort of the pattern behind what you're saying, and I see the truth behind that question, sort of. I would not personally describe it as a children's casino because it's more like a... Children don't have any concept of resources, really, is what the difference is for me. Adults have, a lot of adults anyway, have a concept of resources, a concept of what it means to win more resources. Chuck E. Cheese it's more about the entertainment than the reward, in my opinion. But at the same time, when I was a kid, boy, did I love it there. How many times did I get to go there? Because my parents took me maybe twice in all of my childhood. And man, the pizza's terrible, but as a kid, you just love it. Let's see. I can't pronounce the next name, so I'm just going to read the comment. Hello, brother. Happy New Year with smiles and a healthy life. I want to thank you for your advice. You told me about poker shuffling. I used it and it was very useful. Be good, my friend. I very much appreciate that comment. You be good as well. And happy and healthy New Year to you too. Jong says, I went all in over the top and player Y called, and sure enough, that player had a king high flush draw and hit on the river. Well, then you got your money in good. That is excellent. It's excellent. So I want to be clear here. I think about poker now as the decisions. Were the decisions right? If the result of it was not good, that just means I don't have a big enough bankroll, honestly. You know that you're going to lose sometimes at poker. There's no way that's not true. So because you know that you're going to lose at poker, if you want to play poker from a winning perspective, in my personal opinion, and it sounds like you get it, but in my personal opinion, you have to think about your decisions and don't worry about the story as it unfolds after the decision. And if you have a big enough poker bankroll and you're a winning poker player, then the results of those decisions don't actually matter unless you find out that you made poor decisions, and then you have to figure out how to make better decisions. But them having a higher straight in that case does not mean that you made a poor decision either. That's sort of the result, right? It's just what's their range? What is their probability of having different hands in that case? Carter says, hey, I need help making a better riffle. Mine is very sloppy. Is yours shuffles card by card? So yeah, with my riffle, if you do it exactly like I do it in the video, you should be able to get every single card to interlace. So the key points to this that would probably make it easier and just for you to focus on, all right? And I'm actually including stuff like this in the polished course on Truepokerdealer.com. By the way, nowadays you can get the course on YouTube. You can also get it on Truepokerdealer.com. The one on Truepokerdealer.com has like tests and quizzes and stuff that I put together. YouTube doesn't have a place for me to put that stuff in. So you get the exact same price and you get a bit more value right now, and it's going to get better and better on Truepokerdealer.com for the same course. Just mentioning that. But when you go to riffle here, there's a few things you really want to make sure about, okay? In order to get that control, the first thing you got to make sure about is your thumb has to be right on the corner, okay? So that you have full control and you can go like this with every single card. Wait, let me get it on the camera. Every single card one at a time. I got to figure out where it goes. So if you get it right on the corner, some people when they're learning, they get their thumb not right perfectly on the corner and you have less control. Right on that corner with your thumb is huge. The other thing you want to make sure about is if you get your pinky on the side and it's kind of curved like this, you're going to get less control. But when you flatten your fingers, if your pinky is sort of taking up the entire side of the card, that is where it's at. Between that and your thumb in the right position, you have so much control in order to riffle very nicely. So go back and watch the shuffle video. And you can see I even slow it down. You can put it YouTube on 25% speed, 0.025 speed, and you can look at it and look at my finger positions, especially where my thumb is, especially where my pinky is on the outside. That should make a pretty big difference for you. And if those don't work, then make sure that you get good plastic playing cards such as Copags like this. Makes a huge difference. Vince says, what is your strategy when just sitting down at the table? Can you still range people's hands without knowing their betting patterns? So the answer is yes. Now, I want to be clear here. Like I said, I consider myself a good poker player, but once I started working on live poker coaching with Poker Pro, Michael Lockey, I started to learn how much I didn't know. And I'm currently in the process of retraining my mind as a poker player. And I make sure to play 2-5 every so often, cash game. Okay, but what I do now is I sit at the table and I start to force myself as everybody takes their action to identify what their range is in that moment. And it's like, look, if you've never seen somebody play before, you might tell yourself, well, I don't have any way to know. But you can sort of tell. Mike likes to say there's this guy like Old Man Coffee, right? You know, he's going to be sort of a tight player. Then you can look at people and sort of figure out, like, are they regs, are they fish, stuff like that. There's Mike's putting together a course that's actually going to be really, really solid for teaching people exactly what you're asking, okay? And you can get a lot of this. If you just watch the 26 hands that are out on live poker coaching right now, like it's 5 minutes per video roughly. It's not too hard. You start to really get a sense of how to range people. But the answer is yes, because how do you know? Well, one thing that you know is when somebody raises, they have a hand that they decided to raise with, right? When they check the flop after raising pre-flop, that means something. When they bet the flop, if you have a hand that you can check raise with, how they react to that, it means something. And you can range people to a large degree without knowing them at all. And then there's other ways to get additional information too. And, you know, we talk through a lot of that stuff. And that's actually, like I said, it's a course that he's putting together that I'm going to be a part of. And I'm really excited to, you know, mostly because I want to learn that stuff. Let's see. Jong says, AJ fan, 3600 Dave and Buster's are the new. Yeah, that's true. Dave and Buster's are the new Chuck E. Cheese. Ace Cyst Poker says, hi, I would like to know your thoughts on when do you think there will be one set of standardized set or rules across the world? That's a great question. So the TDA has worked since about 2002 on creating a universalized set of poker rules for let me make myself a little bigger here. A universalized set of poker rules for high stakes tournaments. And they've done a great job with it. You know, part of what I'm actually doing, it might not seem like this, but part of me creating an online course for how to deal poker through a YouTube channel is trying to do the exact thing that you're saying. So, you know, the idea here is people learning from the same source are going to get the same information, right? And the thing that I do in the course in order to try to be fair is I teach people the multiple different methods that I've seen most commonly in casinos, and then I pick one that I think is my favorite in terms of what I would choose if I were running a room. Now, as this starts to get more traction, because it's pretty new, I came out with it this summer, as it starts to get more traction, it can become more universal. And then, you know, from there it has to keep going. But how long do I really think it's going to be? I think you're looking at so I don't know who else would do it other than me, if I'm being honest. And based on the way that I'm approaching it, I should have the poker dealer training relatively universalized for people within the next 2 years. But then there's cash rules and rooms and all this type of stuff, and that's even harder. I'm planning on creating poker supervisor training as well using this platform, and that is, I think, what will really do it. But, you know, I've taught, so you guys know me as Truepokerdealer as a poker dealer, but I've actually been a supervisor and a shift manager, and I've for longer than I've been a poker dealer, and I've trained poker dealers and I've trained poker supervisors. And the real issue with the industry is there's no universal supervisor training out there, and so that's one of my future projects once the poker dealer course is really good and smooth and everybody gets everything that they need, right? Like I said, right now I'm putting the course on truepokerdealer.com. I'm able to add quizzes to it. I'm working with other people now on this in a full-time way, and it's really getting a lot better one day at a time. And this is the type of thing that's going to building up this knowledge base. It's not just how to do it, it's also how to teach it. It's also what people's responses are when they hear the different things, and then it's the feedback and the criticisms and all this stuff. But I mean, you know, yeah, one of the things I have to teach in there is how the minimum raise amount in the industry, even including the TDA, is not universal between the East Coast and the West Coast of the US or Europe. It's like there's rules that are like this that are sort of all over the place. So I think that you're looking at probably about 5 years, and it's only going to be done through True Poker Dealer for cash games and for supervisor training. And then the rest of it, I believe, is going to be continued through the TDA, which they're just an amazing organization that I have learned a ton from in terms of how to go about making changes to procedure and all that stuff. Their system is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the way that they go in, and when they need to make a change to a rule, they don't just change a rule anymore. They tried that. It doesn't work. So what do? They create recommended procedures. They keep them out there for 2 years. They ask poker rooms to test them. They get feedback over the course of that 2 years. And then 2 years later, they decide, do we want to put it in or get rid of it? It's so much better that way. So it's a process is the answer. And I really appreciate that question. I probably answered it longer than I should have, but it is what it is. John says, New Kids Entertainment Place. Yes, Dave & Buster's. I've been there as an adult, and I'm certainly not going to say it's only for kids. John says, I lost the hand as I had the straight and lost to the flush. Yeah, I saw that. Lost to the flush in a tournament, which I was in the final 14 players out of 50 players. Well, I mean, look, you got your money in good. So that's all you can do in poker is get your money in good. It's what, like, poker tournaments are amazing, and they're also so brutal. Ace Cyst Poker says, TDA, WSOP, EPT, Grosvenor casinos, and I understand different U.S. can have varying interpretations of some rules. This can cause arguments from players who play at different venues. Well, absolutely. So I totally agree with that. There's a few factors here, though, as well. Like in the last TDA, they were talking about, what's his name? Johnny, I think Johnny Gomes. I just want to look it up. TDA. I don't like mispronouncing people's names. I have to look at the board about the poker TDA. Yeah, Johnny Grooms. That's what it is. Yeah, that makes way more sense. Johnny Grooms in the last TDA summit was talking about how in Baltimore, the Maryland state regulations actually force them to do things a certain way sometimes. It's like the state regs are where the rules about misdeals fall, and fouled decks, I think, is probably what I'm trying to say here. And it's like there's not a lot he can do if the rest of the industry does it one way, but his state regulations say he's got to do it one way. He's got no choice, and neither does anybody else in the state. So there are going to always be things like that make it hard. Like in order to get it into the actual regulations in state government, it's a bit of work. I do think it gets easier over time when they become clearer and clearer. But yeah, I mean, it does cause arguments from players who play at different venues. But I do think one of the strongest things that the TDA's done is they've started leaning toward random card theory where, you know, they just know it doesn't matter, right? Like, we do all this crazy procedure in order to preserve the order of the deck, and it's just like a made-up thing that people use to prevent people from getting upset with their expectation. And Grosvenor, the S is silent. Thank you for telling me that. Anytime someone can help me be less stupid, I appreciate it. My point is that there's a lot of challenges with some of this stuff. It goes into some regulation and it goes into arguments. But wait, what am I trying to say? I was saying they're going toward random card theory, and them going toward random card theory does eliminate some of the challenge. Like training players to think in terms of just random being good is so valuable to poker. One thing that they said in the TDA Summit in 2019 that I thought was a very clean and clear point is we used to play online poker a lot more. We still play it some. Some of the sites, Full Tilt being one of them that a lot of us used to play. Yeah, I know Full Tilt has this other stuff, but we used to like playing there. And their software did not even create a 52 card deck that they dealt out. Their software dealt out the original cards to everybody in a hand, and then it would have a pool of cards that it drew from randomly for the flop, turn, and river. And we didn't care. None of us cared, right? So like we're doing it with software. We don't know that we're doing it with software. at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Why not just do it in person? Why am I bringing this up? Because as this stuff starts to make more sense to players, it makes it a lot easier to make rulings that are truly in the best interest and fairness of the game, as opposed to precedent-based rulings where people get upset if it's not the way they expected it to be. It's much better to have an educated player base that understands why something's being done regularly. Because if the ruling doesn't make sense to them, but they understand where it's coming from, they're fine most of the time. So, I like the thing that you're doing, asking about universalizing poker for sure. Link to TPD course website. I appreciate that very much. I'm just putting here. It's just www.truepokerdealer.com. You can literally get the course on www.truepokerdealer.com, and it's the exact same course as what you get on YouTube. The only difference is we add some stuff to the one on truepokerdealer.com because we're allowed to. We have a full learning management system there, as opposed to YouTube, which only allows videos and community comments and stuff like that. I really like doing all this stuff on YouTube. I really like that people get the course through YouTube. I also like having that same course available on truepokerdealer.com using what's called an LMS, learning management software or system. I said the wrong thing, but meant the right thing. Carter says, thank you. Let's see. Damien says, what happens when the pot is an odd amount? Say there is $105 in the pot that needs to be split between 3 players. What happens to what's left over? So that's what's called an odd chip. And with an odd chip, it goes to the player who is in the worst position at the end of the hand. So, if you've got one player that's on the button, one player that's where the big blind was, and one player that's in middle position, so you got big blind, middle position, and on the button, the player that is on the big blind is going to get the first extra chip. If there's a second extra chip, it would be the player who was in middle position, and the button is always going to be the worst position. And sometimes people say closest to the button gets the odd chip. With that it's a very confusing thing. I hate that language, but what it really means is the person who is the next to receive the button in a future hand is the one that gets the extra chip. So crazy how that language turned into closest to the button without anybody caring what people would interpret it later. But it is what it is. And yeah, you can see like clear demos of how to do all that stuff in the course if you want as well. Carter says, how does it work when a card house or casino hires a dealer in terms of interviewing? Good question. The process for getting a job in a casino is different from casino to casino. Generally speaking, somebody will have to both interview and audition. The interview is usually a one-on-one conversation with either the director and or a manager in the room. Sometimes HR will have a separate interview as well, depending on how big the property is. And then this is only once they've contacted you. Generally, before you get to this stage, you have to reach out to them, apply online and all this stuff. Send your resume, talk to them in person, get invited to an audition, something like that. Then the audition itself, there's so many different formats, but you basically have to prove that you can deal in front of them under pretty high pressure. It's either one-on-one or sometimes it's in a group where there's 9 people that come in at once, and there'll be one person that's dealing at a time and everyone else is around there playing. That way you can recreate a game. In table games, they tend to audition an experienced dealer on an actual live game. They do that a bit less in poker, but I have seen it where they'll have an actual live game where a dealer will just tap in and show whether or not they can deal. But generally speaking, it's going to be either one-on-one or one-on-3, like you're dealing with a few people playing and trying to represent a bunch of hands, and you're just dealing poker to whoever's there. Let's see. And then they'll tell you usually after the fact whether or not you got the job. You don't find out in the moment a lot. Recently I've been working with a poker room that's opening in Virginia, and we've been doing auditions that are virtual. So I'm actually facilitating the audition on behalf of them with the director present, and we have it all hooked up with cameras and everything. And so they're playing poker there, and I'm taking notes and all that stuff. And it's pretty cool because, nowadays with video technology, a lot of or enough poker rooms is starting to happen where poker rooms are actually allowing people to audition via video in different ways. I do know 2 dealers that have gotten hired, not in Virginia, not what I'm talking about, who've gotten hired by sending in a tape of them dealing. Tape being the old-fashioned term. It's a video clip of them dealing. One of them requested it for them to deal, I think it was Big O is what they wanted them to deal. And, I do auditions with people. They're paid. So you have to pay. You have to reach out to me by sending an email, and we can schedule an audition if you think you're ready to go. And, I let people keep the video, and I tell them everything that they need to correct. And it's a very good process to help anybody that's trying to pass an audition. So if anyone ever wants to audition with me and get a copy of the video, feel free, and we can fix any bad habits and make it so that you look clean and great as a dealer. Let's see. Vince says, are there situations where a dealer will be pulled off a table by a supervisor, and have you witnessed it? Yes, I have. I have been the one to pull people off of tables before. Like I said, I've been a supervisor and shift manager plenty of times. So first, if a dealer freezes up on a game because maybe they made a mistake or somebody was rude to them or something like that, you got to get them tapped out. It is what it is. In the most extreme circumstance I've ever seen, I have had a dealer who was so freaked out they couldn't even finish a hand, and we had them put the stub down with a supervisor present, and the supervisor jumped in and finished the hand. And then there's other scenarios too where it has nothing to do with these circumstances. Maybe a dealer just feels sick and they have to get tapped out. Much better to have them puke near the table than at the table, right? Stuff like that is certainly... if you're a dealer and you have an emergency, speak up loudly and say, I need to be tapped out. Like, I need to be tapped out as quickly as possible, because if you're not assertive about it, it's going to be messy. Like, I have seen a dealer throw up in a roulette table that I was supervising before, and it was like, there was no notice. I just look over and they're throwing up. I'm just like, I don't know. I hate stuff like that, but it happens. The other situation where I've had to pull somebody off a table has been where they started to get confrontational with a player. And, as soon as that happens, if you're ever managing a poker room in any way and you see a dealer and a player get really confrontational with each other, the best way to diffuse it is to just have them tapped out immediately. Like, you don't need to show support to that situation getting worse. It's like, yeah, you want to support the dealers, but you also want to remove the dealer because, even if you remove the player instantly, right, which you have to get security and all this stuff for, which you do, all right, the player almost always ends up getting kicked out in these scenarios. But even if you're going to remove the player first, like, the dealer's still going to be fired up at the table. Like, you got to get him back to the break room, get him to, like, calm down a little bit, I mean, I've heard players insulting a dealer's mom when the mom passed away, and I don't think they knew that, if I remember correctly, but nonetheless, there's situations where dealers can get really fired up. It doesn't happen a ton, but I'm thinking through about 10 years plus in casinos, and I can think of maybe 3 times in my 7+ years as a supervisor and shift manager where we had to tap someone off who was like really heated. It might be more like 6 or 7 times now that I'm thinking about it, because some of them are a little bit less memorable. It's just preventative, right? If you're a dealer, by the way, and you ever get tapped out of a game where you think it was unjust, just go with it. Like, don't take it personally. The supervisors are not connected directly to your brain, right? Like, the people that work in the poker room that make the decision, they're not hooked up like the Matrix, where I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu. They don't know what you feel. And so if they see something that is possibly a problem, they're just going to alleviate the problem and get you off the game. And you can't take that personally. You're going to have a conversation about it later. But, yeah, it's pretty much how it goes. Let's see. Ace Cyst Poker says, I use TDA rules for all my home games and pub poker leagues that I'm TD for, as they are solely focused on tournament rules. Yeah, and they're great. For sure. Joel says, Happy New Year, Mark. Interested in your thoughts about tipping out hosts' floors and a percent of the dealer tip pool rate suggestions. So, let's see. So I worked in both types of rooms. I worked in a room that did not tip out, and I worked in a room that did tip out. I can say for sure that when there was a tip out, the supervisors were better, and the supervisors were also greedier. So it's like the room probably ran smoother. The supervisors were just trying to open games and get as much in the tip, get as many games going and as many dealers dealing as possible. That is absolutely beneficial for dealers and supervisors alike. So it's good for the room to do that. The supervisors are more engaged, but they also do this thing where because you're sharing tips from the tip out, it was 10% where I was at. The supervisors would try really hard to be the only supervisor working. And what would happen is you'd have if you had 7 games going, one supervisor wanted to try to handle it on their own because 2 supervisors, they get less money. If you get up to 10 games, one supervisor would try to handle it on their own, and the director would have to insist on having more than one. It's like there's weird dynamics that come up. So, but I do still think at the end of the day you get better supervisors with a mandatory tip out. I also think that there's been lawsuits that have recouped the money from that, where they just people go around and get everybody to sign these things. And so if I were running a room, I mean, the best case scenario would be to just pay the supervisors correctly, honestly. If you have a room that has a lot of business, I'm trying to think it through. I don't know. I think 10% is a good amount if you're going to do it. Like doing 15% is more than you need to. 10% is a good amount if you're going to do it. If the poker room can afford to just pay the staff, I would say to do that. You can take a slightly higher rake and have it not be tips. I don't know. Dealers, so here's the thing, it's tough about this. Dealers generally, I talk about it's $25 to $40 an hour. Well, supervisors are not usually going to make that much unless there's a tip out. And so I really have mixed feelings. But the real thing that keeps coming up for me as I think about this and sort of decide which way I would go if I were running a room is I think I would have a tip out as long as I cleared it with legal in my state and decided that I wasn't at risk for a lawsuit. And I would probably have it be 10%, and I would put things in place that made it so that the room was run with integrity all the time. Because I think at the end of the day, the stuff that I'm thinking of, the real problem was the way that it was run. I don't think that it was the fact that there was a tip out. I mean, it's just such a powerful thing, though, for supervisors to make more money than dealers. It's incentive for people to learn to be supervisors. It's incentive for people to stay as a supervisor for a long period of time. The rooms that don't have a tip out, all of the supervisors just daydream all day long about being dealers and making more money. It's this crazy, crazy thing. And I mean, it's depressing to hear about how much the dealers make when the supervisor's not getting tipped out at all. By the way, what is a tip out? A tip out means that at the end of a dealer's shift, they go and they count how much they made from the day. And when the cashiers count it, 10% of it rounded down goes into a pooled supervisor tip jar. That tip jar at the end of every individual day in most places will be emptied and counted by whoever's closing at night or whoever's ending the last shift. And when it gets counted, it ends up going on the supervisor's checks based on how many hours they worked for that given day. And it aids nicely as a supplement so that the poker room can, it's a way for them to pay supervisors more without it coming directly out of the poker room's pocket, which you guys might think, well, poker rooms make a lot of money. It should be fine for them to do that. I mean, there's truth to that, but it is expensive to pay for supervisors. And the poker rooms generally are going to do what they can, which is charge, the going rate in the area, which is usually less than the dealers make. And there's still going to be people that do the job one way or another. So this is a full potential live stream if I were to do this. So I'm going to sort of leave it at this, but 10% is my suggested rate. Check it with legal in your state if you're opening a room or running a room. And I would include the cashiers in that. I would include the brush in that, and the chip runners in that as well. And it would be, I forget what the breakdown I would recommend would be, but I would not give 100% of it to the supervisors. You get good supervisors. You can have the supervisors make like $18 an hour and still do really well with a tip out in a busy room. But you also have to make sure that the integrity's there, and they're not like sending supervisors home just so they can make more in hours and all this stuff. John says, could you explain about kill pot bets? This is one of the lessons of the All Texas Hold'em course. I do talk about kill pots in detail in that. Again, you can get that at truepokerdealer.com, or you can get it by joining the channel on YouTube. It says seat 4 is cut off and kill pots in a cash game. Seat 3 will raise the kill pot amount. Does the kill pot player act last? Generally speaking, the kill pot player does act last pre-flop. Occasionally, the kill pot player is going to be acting in turn, starting to the left of the big blind. That depends on the poker room that you're in. And I'm sort of going to leave it at that, because that is a very large topic, honestly, like how kill pots work and all that stuff. Just in case somebody's wondering, what is a kill pot? A kill pot is like, say you're playing 4-8 limit, and you're in a limit game that has a kill pot. Well, the next if a player wins back-to-back pots for a certain amount, the next pot, instead of being 4-8, might be 8-16. It might be 2 times as much. It's called a kill because it kills the game, and because it's awesome, is sort of the answer. It's fun, being the excitement of like huge bets that you're not used to occasionally. Soho, welcome to the bonus mixed game lessons. Join the bonus mixed game lessons. Super appreciate that. Happy to have you as a member. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see. Jung says, did you see the incident at the Aria poker room? There was a fight between one of the players and a dealer last year before Christmas. I did not. It's interesting. I feel like Aria has this major spotlight on them. Aria is one of the absolute best run rooms I have ever seen. I recently noticed that it seemed like Sean McCormick, who I know was the director there, I'm not sure what's going on now, he seemed to have either deleted his Facebook account or something. He was in a lot of the poker room groups on Facebook that, like, I sort of keep an eye on him because there's a lot of information there, But I'm not sure what's going on there today, but historically, Aria has been absolutely on point, and I have nothing but positive things to say about them. I've only played there a few times, but the staff seems to be really, really solid. But no, I did not know. I did not know that there was a fight there before Christmas. I do know that fights happen in poker rooms sometimes. It's always like crazy and sort of unfortunate, but that's interesting. If you have any more info about that, I'd be curious to hear it. But at the same time, I'm going to read it in a way that's trying to like not create something, you know what I mean? Because I find that information, when it gets spread by person to person speculating and all this stuff what's going on here, can be a bad thing. I'm not trying to spread anything. It's incorrect. Simon said, how can I find a job in an underground poker game? I don't personally have any connections to underground poker games. I mean, I'm thinking, like, I hear about them sometimes. I've heard about them in Texas. Part of what I understand the challenge in Texas is with how these poker rooms have opened up is that the players in Texas are used to underground games, but I don't know how they work, and I don't know how to find a job in one. But I mean, the real thing I want to say is, why not just get a job at a real poker room, right? Are you living somewhere that only has underground poker games? But yeah, I don't know. Usually those types of things, you got to know somebody, from what I hear. I've heard of some high stakes underground games and some low stakes underground games in different places, and everybody that's ever worked in one of them that I've ever talked to has always known somebody that got them in. A lot of them started to be a player first. Damien says, I do like to play a lot of cash poker, but struggle in tournaments. Would you recommend playing the same way in a tournament as you do in a cash game? No. I absolutely would not recommend playing the same way in a tournament. Let's see. So the poker pro that I work with, Michael Lockey, is he's actually a tournament pro who also, because he's so good at poker, can teach cash pretty easily. But the tournament concepts in general are definitely different. Why? Because cash games, you're usually playing like 100 plus big blinds deep. Tournament, by the time you get anywhere significant in the tournament, a lot of the time you're playing like 20 bigs. And so it's just a totally different thing. You know, for example, one of the things that Mike Lockey teaches is if you're pre-flop facing one raise, facing an open, and you have the right type of hand, maybe like a king queen or something like that. If you're about 20 bigs deep and somebody raises to, we'll say 4 big blinds pre-flop, that's a great all-in spot. Why? Because it's really hard to call an all-in jam there in that spot, and you'd be picking up about 20% of your stack. And these are the I'm getting people sending me a link to the video for this. Okay, maybe I'll have to take a look at it. These are the types of things. It's a very different thing. And you know, picking up 20% of your stack pre-flop in this scenario is what I'm talking about only. Okay, so facing one raise or a raise and a call or a raise and a call and a call. If you can go all in and get 20% of your stack at any given time, and you have the right type of hand to do it, that's tournament poker as an example of what would be different. In cash games, you're not generally looking to find an all-in shove spot pre-flop because you're deeper. So yeah, in a cash game, you're generally looking to get weak players to go deep in a hand with like a top pair type hand and get paid off, or put pressure on them when you feel like their range is weak against what's on the board and against what you have, and you probably get them to lay down a weak type of hand that has you beat. But in both cases, you know, as Mike always says, what better hands are folding and what worse hands are calling should help guide your decision making all of the time in poker. Let's see. All right. What do I want to do with this video? I'm going to sort of take a peek at it here, and I don't know if I want to play it, but all right, I guess I'll show this on the screen. Hang on a sec. Where is it? All right, I'll show this, and I'll just do a brief little conversation about it. I'm not going to put the sound in it, so we can hear it like this. All right, so you guys can kind of see right here. There's plexiglass everywhere, and there's two people that are fighting, and I'm told this is Arya from the chat. I don't know that for sure. Looks like it probably is. It's hard to tell, you know, how early this is. It looks like the poker players at the table are the ones that sort of went to break it up. All right, I'm gonna just pause it here, and I'll close it now. So now I can talk about it. So the first thing is, I mean, that type of stuff happens occasionally. It's like what a lot of the media thinks of poker. I would not call that a fight, honestly. Maybe that tells you guys that I've seen stuff like that before, but I would say in the 10 years that I worked in the industry, I saw stuff like that 7 times at the most. It doesn't happen a ton, and it didn't seem like anybody was really in danger in that case. But I mean, I know a dealer who tried to do that and ended up getting fired. They just snapped, you know, and it was one of those like blackout snaps where you don't even remember anything by the time you're done. You're like, oh, I'm out of a job. Stuff like that does happen, but I thought it was really cool in that video, by the way, that the people at that were actually playing just went in and sort of broke it up, you know. But yeah, like if I'm being honest, I have seen fights be a lot worse than that. But listen, people are drinking at the table, and I've never personally seen anybody that was innocent, that was not involved in it at all, get actually injured. I've never seen anything even close to that when I think about it. And I don't really remember hearing it. But I mean, look, poker is a confrontational game. People are there trying to win money from other people. They're not always nice to each other. They try to tilt each other, get them to be emotional and upset. And the result of it can sometimes be what you just saw. Merry Christmas, I guess. But yeah, that happens sometimes in poker rooms. I want to be super clear about something. I genuinely do not believe that is a reflection of the staff at Aria in any way, based on what I saw. I'm trying to say I don't believe it's a negative reflection. They're just, there's two people that just sort of got upset with each other. There's not a lot you can do about that in any business. I think if you were to look in like retail stores and all this, and like shopping malls and all this stuff, people fight sometimes. It just is what it is. Maybe I'm minimizing it too much, but to me that seemed... it didn't seem like what I pictured a fight being. And people love capturing stuff on cameras now. Like, if you guys ever work in surveillance, you'll see some fights. It might not be in the poker room. Joel said, recently played in a room where they took a jackpot rake, $2, even though it didn't get to a flop. Have you seen this before? Yes, I have. So the first thing I'll say is the procedure of a poker room, it used to be like a really big deal to do no flop, no drop, where there's nothing that's taken if there's no flop. As poker rooms started to add lots of money to high hands and stuff like that, they just said, you know what, we don't care anymore. It's not going to cost us any players. People are still going to come back, so let's just start taking $1 even if there's no flop. Some rooms literally take the big blind every single hand if it gets raised. I've seen a room literally take the big blind, go to the jackpot, as soon as, they wouldn't take the actual blind and take it away from being in front of the player. But the answer is yes. This is something that some rooms do. And the thing I want to say is, I feel like I'm 100% sure that I'm right with this. If you have a poker room and you have a policy where the dealers are supposed to take $1 or more for the jackpot or the rake when there's no flop, I believe that you're only getting that dollar from dealers about 70% of the time or less. I feel like I've never played in a single room that has a policy where they're supposed to take that $1 or $2, and I've never seen every dealer take it. And I pay close attention without having to put effort in, right? For me at a poker table, I'm seeing everything the dealer's doing without even trying. It just is what it is. And it's always blown me away how they'll have this policy and the dealers just won't do it a lot of the time. For example, when I play 2-5 at some rooms in South Florida, they're supposed to take $1 every single time for the jackpot, no matter what. And I'll raise pre-flop, and there's a $2 small blind and a $5 big blind. And some of the time I get back 7, some of the time I get back 6. It's just I'm always like, okay, I got an extra buck when it happens. But yeah, that is a part of the policy, and it's always tough for the dealers that do take it, because the dealers that do take it correctly, they're sometimes looked at as the bad guys, where they're the ones that have to deal with the confrontation because the other dealers don't actually do their job, and it's a super weird dynamic, And that being said, you can sort of see from that little explanation that not everybody pays attention to what they're supposed to take for the jackpot. The rake, they pay very close attention to with surveillance from what I've seen. Sometimes that gets messed up, don't get me wrong, but the jackpot's not always paid super close attention to. At the end of the day, it's supposed to just be the player's money. But I like living in a world where everybody gets the procedure right all the time. And it's hard for me to play at places where this happens, but that's how it seems to be. Let's see. The video gamer says, oof. Damien says, only once I've ever seen a bust up in a poker room after 5 years of playing at my local casino. It's so rare things like that happen. If you work full time, you see stuff, but it also depends what neighborhood. I worked for a handful of years in a room in a pretty bad neighborhood. It just, it's sort of the luck of the draw on that. I believe on the Vegas Strip, you're probably going to see a little bit more stuff than other places because people get really, really drunk there. And, now weed is legal out there. And so I imagine people get in their heads and they're like, if this guy does anything, I'm going to go throw at him and whatever. But also keep in mind, poker rooms have gotten better about dealing with confrontation. Nowadays, generally, supervisors are taught, this is not universal, but supervisors are usually taught if two people start to escalate anything, to kick both of them out or split them up or something like that, you know. So it also has to do with, like, the question is what happened before. That's why I'm saying I don't think Aria is to blame there. I think they've really run things well from what I've seen, at least, you know, going back 7-8 months ago, and I assume it's the same. It's just, you know, sometimes this stuff just pops off quick, and also the dealer has an opportunity to prevent it from getting bad. All the dealer would have to do to prevent it from getting bad would be to call a floor immediately when the players start, like, yapping at each other. You know, it's like, as a dealer, you don't want that thing to happen. Let's see. Also, this stuff happens way more at night, for what it's worth. So if somebody plays or works during the day, you're going to see it less. Damien says, so say that you have low cards, right, but it's the same suit. Would you pay or would you fold before the flop? I think that this is all situational, but generally speaking, like, if you have a 3-4 suited, I'm just almost never going to play that. 4-5 suited or 5-4 suited, I would be more likely to play under certain circumstances later position, maybe to defend. 2 and 3 gappers, I'd be less likely to play. You know, two gapper would be like a 9-6 suited. 3 gapper would be like a 9-5 suited. It's just, you know, do I have a reason to want to play a hand against a particular player? And by the way, this is stuff I've only learned because of Mike Lockey and live poker coaching, which you can watch on YouTube for free. The video gamer consortium, bad house rules leads to bad work. I can't stand bad beat jackpots. Yes, bad house rules do cause problems. It's really nice when a room keeps himself up to date. It's also really hard for a room to do that. They have to have people that are in regular conversation with other professionals. Jong says, what would be the line to draw for players to be ejected from the poker room as a poker room supervisor? Let's see. I used to enjoy that a room I worked at had a rule that said if anyone ever asked to take it outside, you just kick them out. Like, this player said, you want to take it outside? It's like, we don't ever want anybody to be confrontational like that in the room. They're out for a day. Obviously, any type of cheating is always going to be an ejection. But yeah, if cursing at somebody will get somebody ejected. I hate when rooms just warn the players when they, like, if they're pissed off and they yell the F word or something like that because they lost a hand, it's really kind of a dick move to kick them out, right? But if they turn to somebody and say F you, like, right in their face, or across the table at them, just kick them out. You cannot allow that, you know? And to a degree, it's better for your room not to allow people to curse at all at the table, but it's incredibly difficult to have a policy like that. So I'm sort of like, the way I look at it is if you can keep a certain type of environment, you're going to snag like an extra 20% of players. They're going to be all the women that would play recreationally that are not comfortable spending time in the casino. But most poker rooms, just there's so much to change in order to get that. So I sort of understand not taking that side. But yeah, let's see. So it's, what else would get somebody kicked out along those lines behaviorally? Getting loud, raising their voice to an extent that a supervisor can hear it from far away. You know, you want to be careful exactly about what's going on too as a supervisor. You don't just run over there and kick people out. Make sure you know what actually happened. If a player was sort of out of line, but there's some gray area there, as a supervisor, you can pull them off the table. First thing you want to do is ask them what happened. Okay, you don't want to just tell them what's up. You know, you want to get their actual side so that they feel good about it. Even if, like, I cannot tell you, and I have so many people that can attest to this. When I was a supervisor and I would kick people out, I have had so many people who have left in a very understanding way. It's just like, okay, I understand that you can't allow this in the room and I have to go home. Like, thank you is what I would say. And, you know, they would, generally speaking, be able to come back another day. But yeah, if anybody is actually fighting in any way, they're out. Damaging property, they're out, such as like crumpling up a card in their hand and throwing it, or bending it in half and throwing it, or something like that. Throwing their chips across the table, they're out. Stuff like that. Vince says, as a dealer or supervisor, are you trained to look for cheats and Goodfellas? So I haven't actually seen that movie, but I sort of know what you're talking about. Yes, is the answer. We are very trained to watch for people who cheat, especially in blackjack, honestly. But, you know, when it comes to poker, it's not the house's money, but at the same time, you know, we have to be the ones to maintain the integrity. The dealers also have to pay attention to and be responsible for everything that's on their table. If you see somebody adding chips in the middle of a hand, you know, you got to tell somebody. Um, any type of card marking. But, you know, the thing is, in order to get away with that type of stuff, you sort of have to be an actor, and someone's usually going to catch on eventually. But, yeah, we're pretty trained, and we've got an entire crew of surveillance ready to look for us for anything we suspect. Only once I've been to Vegas, and that was on my 21st. I did go to Aria and play, and the staff was amazing. Yeah, I mean, they really are. Do you like the idea of paying the entire room 10% of the mega bad beat, or just the players dealt in? I don't really care for bad beat jackpots anymore. I think that, you know, they're cool if you're the person who wins any portion of it, but at the end of the day, promotion money is best spent when it's going to bring in more business to your poker room. So I don't really think that bad beat jackpots or mega bad beat jackpots or any of that stuff move the needle, meaning get people to play poker who otherwise would not have played in a given day, or at least not a significant amount. So for me, I think other promotions are probably the better way to go. That said, if given a bad beat, do I like 10% of the mega bad beat going to the entire room? Sure, if you don't mind doing the paperwork, like, it sounds great. I really like stuff like that going in the online poker room. So, you know, I used to see on, maybe it was Absolute Poker or something like that years ago, before we found out that they were lacking in integrity, which is allegedly, I can't say for sure. But it seemed like, if I remember right, they had a bad beat jackpot, and like anybody who was playing in a table that was eligible for the bad beat would get a share if it hit, which I thought that was cool. But yeah, for like an actual live poker room, I just don't think it makes more people show up unless it's up over like 600 or 500 or 600,000. It takes a long time to get there. DFLY says, do you know of any schools for dealing on the East Coast? I'm interested in learning, but not sure where to look. So if you're looking for an in-person school, I don't know what's open during COVID. I just created a course that does teach you how to deal poker online. And you can certainly learn on either YouTube, or you can go to Truepokerdealer.com and get the course there. And I just charge $50 a month. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I think learning on True Poker Dealer is the best option right now during COVID. But if you're looking to learn in person on the East Coast, if you're talking about the entire East Coast, I know that they do training in Virginia right now. You can look up Pop's Poker Room. I have done some work with them, and I do their auditions. He's done some classes. I know that you can, a couple times a year, again, I don't know how it works with COVID, but a couple times a year, Columbus, Ohio has a free 8-week poker dealer course, because it's somewhere that people don't want to live as much. A lot of places people are looking to move to be dealers, but people don't want to move to Ohio as much, even though it's a fine place. And they offer an 8-week course, and then generally just hire people from the course right after that. And then, you know, there's a lot of schools in different places around. I've never been a huge fan of any of the schools down where I live, so it's hard for me to sort of recommend them. But, you know, some of them are pretty solid. Let me see. On the East Coast, I haven't heard as much about the schools. There's some on the West Coast that people really rave about, but, you know, I created this course online to make it so that you didn't have to worry about this and you could just learn anyway. So I'm happy to say you can go to truepokerdealer.com and you can find a all-inclusive, everything you need in order to know how to deal poker school right there. Do you work just as a poker dealer, or do you fill in other games too? I have dealt table games. It was how I started. I started out learning blackjack and all that stuff. Blackjack, 3-card poker, Spanish 21. I don't teach that stuff in my course though. Although I do work with Vegas Aces, also a YouTuber, and she's the one that teaches the table games and stuff on YouTube, like I teach poker on YouTube. But I actually don't work as a poker dealer anymore. I worked in the industry for 10 years from 2007 through 2016, and I had a great time with it. I was a dealer, supervisor, and shift manager. And nowadays, I'm an entrepreneur and a YouTuber, and I love it. But I do have dreams of going back to deal 1 or 2 days a week in retirement. I think I'd actually really like that. Damien says, the last time I went to the casino to play, I actually called the dealer. The C word got banned for the rest of the month. Yep, that's how it works. If you curse at the dealer, especially if you use the C word, you will probably not be going back anytime soon. There's some poker rooms actually enable it and allow it, but yeah, as a general rule, that's a no-no. And as you guys can see, that's how it works, right? You know, if you curse at somebody, especially the dealer, you're out. The Copperhound says, what's your favorite 5-card draw or Texas Hold'em? I love both, but 5-card draw is fun. I like 5-card draw at home, but in casinos, I like Texas Hold'em better, personally. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up in the next couple minutes here so you can get your last couple questions in. I do have a meeting that I have in about 10 minutes that I need to keep, so I'll have to jump off. But, you know, as always, appreciate when you guys get going, you get on a roll. It's really fun, just like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. DFLY, do you have any experience as any type of a dealer? And do you have anything that you really genuinely want to be doing, want to be working in? I'm always curious to hear somebody's story. You know, I talked to somebody recently who's looking to be a poker dealer, and they were a craps dealer for a long time. And, you know, I always think it's much easier to be a poker dealer after you've been a table games dealer because your mechanics are going to be on point, and then it's just about learning the rules and procedure. But that said, it's also completely doable without that. I'm just, you know, maybe I'm biased because I started in table games. Joel says, thank you. You're welcome. DFLY says, what do you think about a 2-deck version of poker with extended winning hands? Let's see. So you said, no, not at all, but I could follow up with details in a private message when you have more time. Feel free to email me. I'm always available for emails. I will put my email right here. One thing that's really cool about this is I get to meet a lot of people. I don't really know what you mean by a 2-deck version of poker with extended winning hands. Maybe what you're saying is you can have like pocket aces of diamonds and get 5 of a kind. I'm not sure, but I think that there's something very clean and perfect about poker the way that it is with a 52-card deck. People have been trying to come up with other ways to play it for a long time, and none of them seem to be as good as the original. It's like, you know, variations of it are fun, but the core game itself is pretty solid. Vince says, I've seen most of your vids. You're pretty comfortable with the cards. Do you do tricks and make any videos about tricks? I was always the dealer that learned to be very procedurally sound, and I didn't really try to focus on tricks as much because I felt like I didn't want the bad habits. But I mean, I do love like throwing cards up and catching them and stuff like that. You know, at some point I will probably have a fun time coming up with a dealer version of poker golf where you put a poker table somewhere in a house, and then you put 18 different starting locations, and you get a deck of cards in your hand. You have to like shuffle it, and you pitch whatever card is shuffled on top. Like you have something sealed where you're going to only take one card at a time off, and you pitch a card, and wherever it lands, that's where you pitch from the next time until you quote unquote get it on the green, sort of like golf, right? The green being the green felt of the poker table wherever you put it in the house. I mean, something like that. I enjoy things like that. I think it would become cool to come up with a poker golf game. You know, it's funny mixing up words is what I was going to say. But appreciate you guys very much. Appreciate all your questions and comments. Appreciate Soho for signing up for the bonus mix game. Appreciate the super chat from Riosio. You guys are awesome, and I am going to jump off now. And next week, I will be doing a live stream Tuesday, 2 p.m., just like this, but it will be interviewing Vegas Aces. We are going to be talking about the differences in customer service between table games and poker. She is the table games expert who's dealt a little bit of poker. I am the poker expert who's dealt some table games. So it's going to be a fun conversation, and I'll see you guys then.